Welcome to The Cap, where we are here to speak with college reps and other professionals in the field of college admissions to help answer all your questions and guide you through every step of the process. So if you're serious about college admissions, you've come to the right place. Are you ready? Let's talk about it. And now, here's your host, Dr. John Durante. Welcome to The Cap, the College Admissions Process Podcast. I am your host, John Durante, and I am here to introduce you to college admissions representatives and other professionals in the field of college admissions. Our purpose is to serve you, the students and parents, so that you may gain insight straight from the people who ultimately make the decisions. Regardless of whether you will apply to a particular school being highlighted, you should listen to all of the episodes, as each guest will give you tremendous insight and advice on every aspect of the college admissions process, prompting you to come up with your own follow-up questions for when you visit campus or meet with a college admissions representative yourself. Lastly, if you have any questions you'd like me to cover on future episodes or any comments you'd like to share, please email me at collegeadmissionstalk@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit our website at www.collegeadmissionstalk.com. So are you ready? Let's talk about it. Welcome to The Cap, the College Admissions Process Podcast. I am John Durante, your proud host, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you today Meghan Walsh, who's the Assistant Dean of Enrollment Management at Drew University. Meghan, thank you so much for being with us today, and how are you today?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Great. Well, we're delighted to have you. Why don't we start by simply asking you to tell us about yourself, Meghan, as it relates to being in admissions.
Sure. Well, I am the Assistant Dean of Enrollment Management at Drew University. I've been at Drew for just over 3 years. And I work with students primarily in New Jersey, but also in Southeast Pennsylvania. Each of us kind of have an area of the country that we work with really closely. We're also really involved with events on campus. We have a big one tomorrow, actually. So we have Discover Drew Day that we have, and throughout the spring and summer. So we're involved with events, with working with students, going to high schools to meet with students at college fairs and high school visits, and welcoming our students to campus as well.
Fantastic. So, Meghan, I've heard so many great things about Drew, but tell me, what is it about your university that makes it so appealing for students to want to apply and ultimately attend?
Well, what I think is really special about Drew is that we are a small liberal arts college in the middle of a forest. Our campus is a designated forest. But unlike a lot of small liberal arts colleges in the middle of a forest, we're not in the middle of nowhere. So right from campus, you can walk into downtown Madison, which is a super cute, really charming college town. And we have a direct train line to New York City right in Madison. So you can leave your dorm room and get into the city in just about an hour, which gives our students the opportunity to do a lot of cultural experiences, go see shows, go to museums, explore the city. And it also gives our students a great opportunity to have internships in the city and to participate in something that we call New York City semesters. So 2 days a week, if you're in a New York City semester, you go into the city, you take a class in the morning with a Drew professor in one of our classroom spaces there, and then you spend the afternoon shadowing professionals in their places of business. So that could be on Wall Street. Our students learn about the financial markets and then meet with analysts and traders that are on the stock exchange floor. We have a UN semester where you actually have low-level security clearance at the UN for the semester. We have a museum administration program. There's not too many places better than New York for that. We have a theater program where you actually stage a production with an off-Broadway theater company. A communications and media program where you might be at Rockefeller Center, you're seeing shows being produced, you're going to advertising agencies and PR firms. We also have a art program where you walk around the city and meet with artists and gallery owners. And it's a really great opportunity, all of these, to find out what you're passionate about and meet people that are going to help you along the way as you're looking for careers after you graduate. A lot of these experiences lead to internships. And a lot of these experiences end up being networking for when you're looking for a job after you graduate.
Well, definitely one of the benefits being close to New York City, like you said, it affords students the opportunities for so many different types of internships and cultural experiences, whether it's going to the theater, museums, and all of the great things that the city has to offer. Many students, Meghan, and their parents have reached out, though, suggesting that I ask about life on campus. So, what can you tell us about life on campus outside of the classroom?
Absolutely. So we're a very residential campus. Over 90% of our students live on campus, and we're guaranteed housing for all 4 years. So our students tend to stay on campus. What's nice about that is that we always have something going on then. So sometimes there are big events, like our winter ball is a big favorite. We have a spring carnival every year. We have a music festival. But then other things are small events throughout the week, like bingo night. People always go to bingo night because they give really, really good prizes. So those are really popular. Anytime there's free food at an event, they're really popular. So a lot of our cultural clubs have some really great dinners that people love. Our Thanksgiving feast is always a big hit too. So there's always something going on. And because we're so residential, our students are there, and it is a small community. So it's a very close-knit community.
That sounds awesome. Meghan, can you walk us through the process of how you evaluate the applications?
Sure. So so like I said before, I'm in charge of a particular geographic territory. So the students who apply from that area, I'll read their applications. And what I'm looking for really is the first thing I look at, obviously, is your transcript. I want to see your grades. I really want to see that you challenged yourself throughout the 4 years. So have you taken honors classes? Have you taken AP classes? Did you get a little bit stronger each year? It's not all about your GPA. It really isn't. And frankly, I would rather see how you did in your classes than your actual GPA, because you could have a really high GPA and pad your transcript with electives and and does that mean as much as maybe someone who challenged themselves with some harder level classes and didn't do quite as well. So you weigh a lot of different things. It's never a simple just one number makes a difference. We look at everything. I also look at your recommendation letters. I read what your teachers have to say. I look at your activity section and, have you done leadership activities and community service? My favorite part of your application is the essay. I love reading students' essays. That's how I really learn the most about you. So that all comes into play when I'm looking at an application. Not one data point is going to really make me make a decision. I look at all of it. We are test optional, so students can provide their test scores, and we certainly take that into consideration if they choose to. But if they don't provide their test scores, no assumptions are made about that, because we've been test optional for years, and we know how to read an application without test scores, and we know that they're not always the best way to tell a student's potential.
So it sounds like you truly do take a holistic approach to the entire application process, and I really appreciate that insight on how you go through it. What is the average profile of the current freshman class?
Sure. So our average GPA last year was 3.66, and the median SAT score was 1250. Now, being that we're test optional, that, I think we see on most profiles that the test scores are trending a little higher because less students are providing them. And usually you're only providing them if you are really happy with your test scores. So don't be discouraged if your test scores are a little lower than our median, because remember that those are only people that have submitted them.
And if a prospective student falls a little below the current freshman class's average, what are some of the things they can do to increase their chances of being admitted?
I would absolutely interview. We have an optional interview availability, and really the interview is a really great way for us to get to know you beyond what's on paper. Sometimes things just don't show on your transcript that are really important. Let's say maybe, sophomore year was a little rough. We all know that during COVID, it was hard when you're going back and forth hybrid and in class and home. It was natural that a lot of students' grades dipped. So we do understand that, but being able to have a conversation really puts that into perspective and lets us see some things that maybe didn't show on a transcript. So I would definitely recommend that. And like I said, we look at everything. So there's oftentimes that your teacher recommendation and your counselor recommendation can really show us that you've worked so hard and overcome challenges, and we've really believe in you that way. Sometimes we will ask for your mid-year grades or your first semester grades. So that's sometimes just a way to see maybe if junior year wasn't so strong, let's see how they're doing senior year. So if a school asks you for those, definitely provide them, because it's really the admissions office really trying to advocate for you and hope that you're doing well this year.
Great, and thank you so much for that. You mentioned the interview. Meghan, what are the kinds of things that you're looking to learn about a student when they come in for the interview?
Well, interviewing is I don't want anyone to think the interview is a scary process, because if you work in an admissions office, you're usually pretty friendly. You don't. It's not a job you take if you don't like talking to people. So we're not a very intimidating bunch, but we do really enjoy when our students come and interview. We've been doing our interviews online and doing through Zoom. It was made it much easier for students because it didn't require taking the day off from school or traveling distances. So if a student is on campus, they can absolutely interview in person, but most students have chosen to do the Zoom interviews this year. So really, I just want to see what you're passionate about, what you're interested in. What's your strategy in a class that maybe isn't going so well? What do you do when a class is difficult? What do you do outside of school? And this is sort of a chance to kind of talk about the things that you're really excited to get involved with once you're at Drew. I want to know how you will impact our community and, what you'll get involved with. So learning just about kind of what you're interested in exploring and getting to know you a little better. It's also a great opportunity for a student to ask questions. Sometimes when you're in an info session or on a tour, it can be intimidating to ask a question. So it's a good chance one-on-one just to get your questions answered as well.
Well, thank you so much for that. That's very helpful. Do you use, Meghan, the student's high school GPA as indicated on their transcript, or do you recalculate the GPA using your own calculations?
So yes and no. I don't recalculate the GPA. However, it really is the least important part, in my opinion, of the transcript. I really would prefer to see the individual grades and the rigor of the classes. So, if a senior year, for example, this is important about rigor. Sometimes senior year there is you can be tempted to take a much less rigorous senior year. So having all A's in cooking and gym and classes like that is great, but that won't necessarily help as it would if you were taking pre-calculus with an A. So as much as the GPA isn't recalculated, we do take into consideration what classes so if you have all C's in your academic classes but all A's in your non-academic classes, that isn't really shown on your GPA, but it'll show on your transcript.
Great, and thank you again for that explanation. A student's activity sheet is another piece of their application, obviously. What are the kinds of things you're looking for beyond the work they did in the classroom?
So I look for a well-rounded activity sheet, and I'm going to put a little bit of an asterisk on this, because what I do want everyone to understand is that we know that your activity sheet looks a little different than you thought it would because of COVID restrictions. So for the past few years, we've seen students that say 9th, 10th, and 12th grade that they did an activity because 11th grade, all of their activities were canceled. So I don't want anyone to feel like, they're alone in that. For students applying next year, a lot of times it'll be their freshman and sophomore years that might be a little lighter than junior and senior. So we do understand. We're looking at your application in the context we're receiving it, and we know that times have been very different. What I do look for is, that you have gotten involved how you can. And so having something well-rounded, if you're, involved in a sport, if you're involved in the arts, I'd love to see some leadership, I'd love to see community service. Sometimes I have students that, and this comes up in the interview. Sometimes I'll say, what do you do? What kind of activities do you do? And they'll say, I don't really do anything extracurricularly. And so when you ask the follow-up question, so what do you do after school? And then a student says, well, I have to get home from school because I take care of my sibling, and then I help my sibling do their homework, and then I help my mom make dinner, and then I go and I have a part-time job. Those are absolutely extracurricular activities. So please include those. If you have a job, if you are taking care of family members, that shows us your work ethic. It shows us that you can time manage. So sometimes your activities aren't just your traditional, I'm in the French club. It can be the different things that you do that you really have to juggle as a student. So, don't be afraid to place those on there as well.
Well, I really appreciate that because some people take for granted the importance of a part-time job or taking care of a sibling or maybe even an elder adult that lives in the family, in the home. So I really appreciate you giving that insight, Megan. Thank you so much. How important are students' grades in senior year? And can you give an example of why students' senior year grades made you change your mind regarding their admission status?
So, unfortunately, it kind of depends sometimes on when you apply. So, don't slack off at the end because even if you apply at a certain time, you don't know when your application will be read. So if you're applying regular decision, for example, so those applications can be read anytime, January, February, or even into March. So by then, we usually will see your midterm grades. So it would be very unfortunate to see midterm grades that were really low as a senior because that would really show us that you aren't taking it seriously in the end. Unless, like I said, sometimes there are circumstances that happen, and we definitely take that into consideration. But just remember that it's not over after your junior transcript. Remember that you always have to provide schools with your final transcript at the end, so your colleges will see your grades even after you've been admitted.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Megan. You mentioned earlier the college essay. What are some examples of college essays that really stuck with you?
So this is my favorite topic of all, and I could talk about essays all day, but I will keep it short for the benefit of your listeners. But I do love the essay. It's my favorite part of your application. It's really how I get to know the students. It really doesn't matter what you write about. It's you can write about anything. There's actually an episode of Modern Family that I think about because in Modern Family, the daughter was applying to colleges and she was really nervous because nothing traumatic had ever happened to her. She never had this dramatic moment. So her parents dropped her off in the woods and made her find her way home, and so that she had something to write about. You don't have to have a traumatic experience. I hope you haven't had traumatic experiences in your life. It doesn't have to be something dramatic. You can write about really anything. There's a couple things I'll caution you about, what I wouldn't love to see. And one of the questions on the Common App essay is write about anything. That's pretty, open-ended there. Sometimes people are tempted to use an essay that maybe they used for their English class or history class that they got an A on. And while that shows me that you know how to structure an essay and you know how to use citations and you can write grammatically correct, it doesn't tell me anything about you. I've read some essays where, someone compared Hamlet to Macbeth. I don't really want to read that. It's not interesting to me at this point. So don't do that. That would be my suggestion. Don't do that, even if it was a really well-executed essay that got you an A. I also would say make sure that your essay tells me something that I don't already know from your application. So a perfect example of this is if you are a baseball recruit and you played on the baseball team and you're on a club team and your community service is, helping little kids play baseball, then if you write your essay also about the winning game in your baseball season, you haven't told me anything new about you. So try to find something that, I wouldn't necessarily know just from glancing over your activity sheet right away. a couple of essays that really stand out to me, as you asked. I read an essay once about a student who always went to the same restroom at her school because there were positive messages written on the walls. And she talked about how those messages gave her the confidence to try all of these different things that she tried throughout high school. So it was a really clever way to, without listing out her activities, kind of talk about the things that she achieved and accomplished. Another essay was about a student who spent a lot of weekends working on a stone patio with her grandfather. And as she was laying the stone, she talked about how their relationship grew and about the different parts of her family. It was really beautifully done. When I said it doesn't have to be about anything dramatic, one student wrote her essay about the hair tie that she wears around her wrist all the time, and she calls him Stretchy, and it was all about Stretchy's adventures, which were actually her adventures. So, like I said, it can, if you can make an admissions counselor laugh a little bit, that's great, because we read a lot of essays, so it's really fun if we can get a laugh. I have been known to cry during essays. So, just tell a story. Just really, teach me a little bit about you and show us the impact you'll have on our campus and on our community.
Well, those are great examples and great advice. Obviously, you want a little bit of insight into their personality and what, makes them want to get up in the morning. So thank you for that. Really appreciate it. Meghan, do you offer any supports for students that may have had an IEP or a 504 in high school? And if so, can you explain? What do you offer in terms of supports for students?
Sure, we absolutely do. The one thing that's different about the high school experience and college experience is we won't know that you have any support in high school unless you tell us. So you can't, in high school, a lot of the support that you may have in high school kind of carried over from middle school. And so what I would suggest is that you really learn about the resources that you have. Some students, it's been handled by their parents, so they don't really know what's in their IEP. Make sure that you can advocate for yourself, because the only way we'll know is if you tell us, because that doesn't, your high school records won't go forward that way. So you do have to seek out that support, but we have it absolutely available on campus. I recommend that students, before they even start at Drew, before you pick your classes, before you do any of that you meet with our Office of Accessibility Resources, because they can sit down with you and really talk about the services that you've had in high school, what you'll need in college, and how they can help you. Even, like I said, before you start kind of planning out your schedule, you can do that before, you can do that in the spring of your senior year even. I definitely recommend that.
Well, that's great advice. Students, I hope you're listening. Advocate for yourself. That's something that you should do throughout high school, college, and of course beyond. So thank you for that, Meghan. What about students aspiring to play sports in college? What advice do you have for prospective student athletes in terms of making their intentions to play known?
So we're a D3 school. We have 22 varsity sports on campus. It's a really fun experience. It's a really great way to get involved on campus, to connect with your peers, to keep the competition that you had throughout high school. And, because we're the way we're structured, we make sure that your academics aren't at stake. We want to make sure that you are a student athlete, that you participate in every aspect of campus life. So if you're an athlete, you can still study abroad. You can still do the New York City semesters I mentioned. We have an internship. We really want to make sure that not one part of your experience overshadows the others. So it's a really great opportunity. One thing I would say is to connect with the coach. If you come to campus and you're touring, for example, let your admissions counselor know, and we will, sometimes we can just call over to the athletic center and you can meet with them, send them an email, send them tape, send them, let them know your tournament schedules. So if you are interested in playing a sport, you can reach out to the coach and say, this is where I'll be competing. And they'll continue the conversation with you that way as well.
Those are great pieces of advice, Meghan. Thank you so much. Reaching out to the coaches, number one, is extremely important, but also letting them know if you're in a particular tournament. Again, making them aware is a wonderful thing that you can do to make your intentions to play known. So thank you again for that. Lastly, Meghan, what are the 3 top pieces of advice you would give a student and their parents who are getting ready for the college process?
I really think the most valuable way to know if a school is the right place for you is to visit. Um, Go to campus, take the tour, and then spend a little time on campus outside of the tour. Walk through the dining hall, walk through the student center, maybe just kind of sit on a bench in the middle of campus and take it all in and just see how you feel. Can you picture yourself there for the next 4 years? It's really important to feel at home on a campus because it is going to be your home for the next 4 years of your life. So you want to make sure that it feels right to you. Ask questions, ask your tour guide questions, and just take it all in. It can be a really overwhelming experience, but it's also really fun. It can be really fun to see campuses. The other thing I would say is to connect with your admissions counselor. We're here to help. We're here, to guide you through the process. We do a lot of outreach to students, so nothing makes us happier than when students reach out to us. So when you're on campus, ask to speak to your admissions counselor. Use at Drew, like I said, it's by geographic location. So, everyone has an admissions counselor really assigned to them, and we love getting to know you. So, just ask to speak to us. We'd love that. Send us an email. If you have any questions, we're here to help you with that too. So use us as the resources that we are. If you're interested in a specific program, for example, we can connect you with a faculty member to tell you a little bit more about the specifics. We can connect you with a current student. So I would definitely do that. The other thing, and this is a piece of advice that might be a little bit unique to Drew, but I think it's really valuable, is at the end of your junior year, you can do something called an early estimate. And this is an early estimate of your application to see what merit scholarships you would qualify for. So it takes a lot of the stress out of the application process. So what you would just reach out to your admissions counselor. You can provide a transcript that's complete after your junior year. You can give your test scores if you choose to, and we can give you an estimate of what merit scholarships you would qualify for. In the case of Drew, your merit scholarships range from $10,000 to $25,000 a year. We also have a few additional scholarships that you can apply for. One is our honors program, so that's reserved for our highest applicants who are interested in taking a challenging course load of honors classes and do mentorship and cultural events. They do a thesis at the end. We also have something called the Drew Action Scholars, and these students are interested in serving others, so they will do community service projects. They're really part of a cohort of students when they start at school. Both of those programs are an additional $2,500 scholarship a year, so that's another way to earn a little more merit scholarship money. And then we also have an art scholarship. You don't have to be an art major at Drew. It's just our way of showing appreciation for the arts you did in high school, and that's an additional $1,500 a year. So all of those, would be taken into consideration when you're looking at the kind of financial aid package you'll be offered. We also have need-based scholarships that is determined by your FAFSA, and we can do that in the early estimate as well. Your parents just do have to fill out some financial information, and we can provide you basically of what your financial aid package would look like if you applied. So that's a really helpful tool. I would definitely suggest doing it. You have absolutely nothing to lose, and like I said, it takes a little bit of the stress out of the application process.
Well, thank you so much for those tremendous pieces of advice. And I'm really interested about the early estimate. That's something that is new. We haven't heard before. And I think it's just a great tool for students and their parents. So at the end of junior year, they could reach out and get an early estimate in terms of what scholarship money they would receive, which I think is terrific. So Meghan, thank you so much for all of that. Thank you so much for your time, your advice, your insight. I'm so grateful because I know it's going to help so many students and their parents. We really appreciate everything you did for us today, Meghan. Thank you.
Well, I loved being here. It was so nice talking to you. I wish everyone the best of luck in their college process. Come and visit us. We'd love to have you on campus, and hopefully we'll get to meet you.
Thank you so much, Meghan. That's terrific.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of The CAP, the College Admissions Process Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please don't forget to tell a friend and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. I am your host, John Durante, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The CAP.